Edward D. Wood, Jr. Well, I'd gone to the Bal Caribe at the Moulin Rouge in my Charles Addams costume, trying to get discovered by a producer, a television producer. Well, I did get discovered by a television producer. It was Hunt Stromberg, Jr., but he wanted me alone. He didn't want the entire family, and I said, well, how are we going to do this? He said, we're not going to tell Charles Addams. I said, I can't do that, but give me a few days. And I came back to him with the character Vampira, which my then husband had named. I had added from a B&D magazine, a bondage and discipline magazine at the time. I had taken a waist cincher and an uplift bra and fishnet hose, and I'd slit my dress, and I wore a pant leather belt, and I had a foot-long cigarette holder and long red fingernails, hemorrhage red. And so I added sex, you know, to the death. I thought that's a good combination, sex and death. Hunt was delighted, and they put me on the air.
8-1 TV was just beginning, and there was a big market for this new medium.
Oh, yes. This was the days of early television, and it was like anything goes. We were all improvisational. There were no guidelines, really. Late at night, too, they didn't care what we were doing. But sometimes I wouldn't get my script until 15 minutes before airtime, and the director would start walking me through my marks, say, whoops, we got to go now, boom, and we're on camera. And the teleprompter is directly above the lens. And if anything went wrong with that teleprompter, I was stuck because I didn't know how to improvise. I was still afraid of the camera. Well, afraid to some degree. Sometimes I'd look deep into it as though it were the eyes of a lover, and I'd look down inside its soul, and I'd silently say during one of my verbal silences, you son of a bitch, I've got you. I've got you. Once I felt I had reached the soul, I was hypnotizing people. And then it turned out that they were writing in the newspaper columns, people are watching the Vampira show, they're hypnotized. They didn't know they really were hypnotized. We opened the show with a scream. I'd come down the corridor through a mist-filled corridor. And when I finally arrived at the camera, Vampira arrived at the camera, she would unexpectedly scream a blood-curdling scream. And then say, screaming relaxes me so. Well, apparently I was instantly a sensation. Even Life magazine came and photographed me. 5 pages in Life. We'd been on the air only 3 weeks when they came, and had fan clubs all over the world, was nominated for an Emmy for the most outstanding new personality of the year. And almost immediately afterward, I was blacklisted and never worked again, except once for Liberace.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles.
Eddie idolized Orson Welles.
You're kidding. My God, I can't believe that. He wanted to be Orson Welles? Well, a good chance. My God.
Well, like my brother Henry would always say, he'll improve. Each picture he made, it always gets better, it'll get better.
Orson Welles, well, he was the only man that I dated in various cities around America, because I'm not much of a traveler. But I was, my first encounters with Orson were in New York when he was separated from Rita. Then he went back with Rita, and after he was divorcing her, he found me in San Francisco and again in Los Angeles. So that was quite a running relationship. But the first time that Orson saw me scantily clad in a boudoir, he said, "Magnificent carcass." I thought, what? Magnificent carcass, indeed, in that marvelous voice of his. That's about all I have to say. I don't want to talk about his giving me clap or anything.
What about...
Toward the end of 1954, I was invited to a socio-professional function at the apartment of Forrest J. Ackerman. And it was a birthday party for Bela Lugosi Jr. It was his 16th birthday, and there I met for the first time Mr. Edward D. Wood Jr. And while he didn't actually ask me at that time if I would work for him, I did encounter him in a small room with a few people, and I thought, this is a pathetic buffoon. You know, he's a man who doesn't even know his own shortcomings. Kind of sad. Pretty, but ineffectual and tragic. I dismissed him from my mind. Well, about a year later, I read a column in the old Los Angeles Mirror that said the same Edward D. Wood was preparing a production, and he was making Z films. I mean, less than a nickel they were costing. And finally, I had reached the point, for the first time in my life, where the major studios wanted me. 3 of them were bidding, and they were going to build a production around me, and oh, it was an unbelievable thing for me. I had finally arrived after endless struggle, and this man said that he had planned to have, or hoped to have, Vampira in his production. I thought, he wants to grab a hold of my heels and pull me back down into the, you know, nickels and dimes mire from which I had clawed my way up, and I was incensed. I thought, I wouldn't work for that idiot. How dare he to aspire to me, right? Well, by late 1956, I was already not working and desperately poor, trying to live on $13 a week unemployment compensation. And a little man came to my door. I did know him slightly, Paul Marco, and he said, I got a script for you. And it's called Grave Robbers from Outer Space. Well, nobody was offering me any scripts of any kind, and anything that would offer me more than this $13 to help embellish it a little sounded great. But then he told me it was Edward D. Wood, and I said, no. But the title is interesting, Grave Robbers from Outer Space. And then he pulled out a fat wad of bills. It was $200 $1 bills. He said, this is a union film, and this is for you, if you want to do the picture. And I said, okay, sounds good. And then I looked at the script and was about to rehearse with myself. Oh, I was unable to say the words. They wouldn't even come out. I was so offended by the dialogue. So when Paul Marco came back, I said, I'm sorry, can I do this mutely like a vampire who's in a trance, just sort of zombie-like? Just whatever you say, we're using your name, okay. So that's why I did it silently. I got into full costume at home, which was my wont, and makeup. And in the mid-50s, that was a little strange, because we didn't have Melrose Avenue yet as we know it today. And so I was rather heavily pancaked in white and dragging black tatters. I got on the RTD and went to the studio. And the studio was on Santa Monica Boulevard, across the street from Sears Roebuck and behind a little old seedy hotel in an alley. Of the Wood people, my darling was Mr. Criswell. I just adored him. Plan 9 was premiered at the Carlton Theater down on Southwestern. And I was taken there to, I was in full costume, and they had me backstage. I was eager to see the film, but they said, no, you wait in the wings here backstage, and when we tell you, you'll cross stage left. And so I did, and as I walked out, a large audience started booing and hissing and sending out jocular catcalls. I mean, really, lots of noise. And they got me at the other end of the stage and said, now wait, you're going to go back the other way. And I was timed, and I was told to go back. And every time I went back, the catcalls just got louder and louder, hooting and hollering. Well, then they explained to me, the people backstage, that every time the big character was appearing on screen, the little three-dimensional one was just strutting across the stage, and it looked so funny to the folks in the audience. So then I said, well, how am I going to see this movie? They said, in a moment, you go and sit up in the balcony, then you can watch. So ultimately, they released me. I went to sit in the balcony, but I wasn't on the screen. And just as I was going to appear on the screen, they said, come on now, you have to go and do the Joe Pine show. Goodbye, I was gone. So I never saw it until 1980.